Logistics, leadership development, performance management, and other specialties. He's heavily involved in training leaders throughout Africa. He retired from the Kenya country leadership team of a multinational oil company as its distribution and operations manager. He started his career in the 1970s as a development banker before moving to the petroleum industry. He is an author. He has written a number of books, The Secret of Contentment, Friendship, Leadership, A Leader's Source of Influence, Christian Professionals in the Marketplace, among others. And I'm sure he's going to mention about that. So why don't we clap for him as he takes it?
Thank you. Can you start that for me? Yes. Bwana asifiwe. I'm grateful to God to be able to come. I've come during chapel, isn't it? I haven't come during the evening meeting. And it's good to see that there are people serious enough to come from the library and give some time to God to hear God's word. And so count yourself blessed that the Holy Spirit was able to disturb you so that you did not decide there is something more important. Remember, every time your friend does not see you, it's because you are not as important as the thing he's doing. It's only we are not rude to tell you, what I was doing is more important than seeing you. So you don't say that, oh, I'm sorry, I was so busy. Actually, the real word is, what I was doing was more important than you. Similarly, when we don't come to the Christian meetings, there's a message. And for God, he doesn't have to imagine. He knows your heart. And he knows the message is, what you are doing is more important than God. You get the point? And so I'm glad that you are here. Our discussion today actually touches on that issue of stewardship, even of time. And my prayer is that in the next few moments, as I try to go through this subject, that God in his wisdom will help us through. I have written a book on it. It's called A Leader is a Steward. And in the few minutes I have available, obviously I can't cover the book. I'll just select a few things. What I don't know, I had donated the book to your library. Sammy, have you ever seen it there?
I believe they're in the main library.
Or you don't go to the main library? Do you have a CU library?
Not yet.
You don't have a Christian library? So it's the main library, okay. You can go, this one you are sure. Do it that to read. It's useless to donate the books if they are not readers. Are you interested in the topic?
Yes.
Okay, then what I will say will be introduce you to what is in the book. And my prayer is that you will get it. Now, when you talk about a steward is a manager of somebody else's assets. That's what we call you a steward. In other words, every time we call somebody a steward, we are saying, see, he is not the rich man. He is only managing things that belong to the rich man. But then you ask yourself, what do I own? And I thought I would start at that level to say, all of us, we have a lot. Somebody said, called Tom Nelson, said, a person can go for 40 days without food. So the fact that you are coming here means you have eaten. Am I right? So the fact that you have food means you have an asset. Because you have not been without food for 40 days. Actually, it means that you will not die if you stay for 40 days. Actually, some other person that I know tried to fast for longer than 40, and they actually went to heaven. They never came back. So you need to be aware. A dry fast, unless you want to commit suicide, which is not biblical, is not right to do that. So please understand the fact that you are here tells me you are very rich. You have not been without food for how many days? 40. So food is important. If you have food, you have an asset. Let me tell you something more important. It is water. In fact, studies show if you are without water, even if you have food, if you are without water for 3 days, you'll be dead. How many days? 3 days. The fact that you are not dead means you have had water in the last 3 days. In other words, when you hear somebody is lasting 40 days, it's not without water. Water means we become dehydrated. And the moment you are dehydrated, your liver fails, your kidney fails, within no time you are dead. Yourself. They all require hydration. They require water. So all of us who are here are very rich because you have had water in the last 3 days. Let me tell you something even more important than food and water. It is oxygen or air. In fact, they say, if you held your nose, close your mouth for more than 3 minutes and continue, you'll be a dead guy. No oxygen for how many minutes? 3 minutes. That tells you, even if you have no food, and if you have no water, if you are able to, and remember, it's not even lack of oxygen, ability to utilize oxygen. Have you seen people in the hospital? They have to be helped by machines. Oh, no, you have just come out of COVID. So we saw people, one of the impact of COVID is that you could not breathe for yourself. You required machines. So the fact that you're able to breathe tells you God has been providing. He is provident for you. But let me tell you something. The one thing that is even more important than that is hope. You cannot last 3 seconds without hope. When you hear people are committing suicide, it's not food they're lacking. It's not water they're lacking. It's not air they're lacking. They are lacking hope. Remember, some people commit suicide and you are assuring. Only for that. But the problem is not the problem. Did you get the joke? The problem is not the problem the guy is facing. Is that he cannot see any way of sorting it out. So he thinks there's no need of being alive. He has lost hope. And 3 seconds are enough to think, by the way, what's the need of living? I have no hope. The next thing you know, you have committed suicide. You'll be dead. So, the biggest gift God can give you is a gift of hope. And with the hope, it doesn't matter, for example, you are thrown out of this campus. You have no school fees at all. And they try the best, they finally throw you out of campus. As long as you have hope, that with or without a degree, God is going to walk with me into the future. Will you commit suicide? No. Hope is the biggest asset anybody can have. And unfortunately, you are likely to have hope if you have not trusted yourself in God's hands. So every saved person is very rich. Because one of the things you get by getting saved is to get hope. Hope for this life and hope for the life to come. That means I can come and tell you I'll shoot you. But the moment I know, if you shoot me, I'll be dead. If I'm actually dead, I'll be in God's hands. All of a sudden, I'll not be worried, isn't it? And by the way, in my working life, I've had somebody come with a gun and put it at the table. Told me, if you don't sort me out, this is what I have. And I could see what you're saying. That unless I agree to become corrupt, since I had refused a bribe, now the only thing left was to get rid of me. And it was very clear, you'll do it. I asked him, where you come from? Have you ever heard of people who say they are saved? Yes, of course he was very unhappy. Yes, if you have heard of them, they normally pay, they want to go to heaven. And the earlier, the better. He walked out of my office. Because you see, if you are saved, death, Paul really tells us how to look at death. He says, for me to live is Christ. But if I die, is gain. So can you see you can't fight a Christian with Death. Because in death, the only thing you are not allowed is to commit suicide. But if you kill me, you send me home. And what's wrong with going home? Am I communicating? This is the asset Christians have, and we don't seem to realize. Hope. And my friend, hope comes from God. And if it comes from God, it means that it's an asset you are managing for God. So if you have hope, and your friends in class do not have hope, and you are not sharing this hope with them, it means you are a bad steward. Because you are not managing the hope in a proper way. Because the reason God has given you hope is for yourself and for others. So let me ask you, your classmates, have you talked to them about the hope there is in Jesus? And that because Christ died for us on the cross, it's accessible to any and everybody? Or do you feel like if they want to go to hell, their choice? Now, if God had said that about us, would we be saved today? Because you see, John 3:16 says, "For God so loved," which is the world, evil people, prostitutes, those are part of the world, corrupt people, all of them. He loved them. Romans 5:8 says, "For he loved us, for we were yet sinners." He did not wait for improvement. And that's what you need, the message that you need to send to others, which will give them hope. And that hope in God is so important because you know that irrespective of your failures, the death of Jesus is adequate for your forgiveness. So when someone says, "How can you do that? Hopeless boy, finished." No, wait a minute. You don't know my Jesus. My Jesus is merciful. Isn't that what we normally quote? We normally quote Lamentation 2, a chorus which we sing. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning, new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness, O God. Great is thy faithfulness. That tells you, irrespective of the failed God, all he requires is to come back to him. And there is still hope. Am I communicating? So you need to understand that with that asset, it doesn't matter, and I'm not suggesting you fail, but even if you failed with the crawling colors, some people pass with flying ones. You fail with crawling colors. As long as you have done your best, therefore you are pleasing to God. Even after failing with crawling colors, you don't become hopeless. You say, "God, I did my best. My best has produced a D. I have no idea what to do with my life. The only thing I know is that there is hope. And you are going to use my D for good purpose." Of course, if you are lazy, you already have a problem with God who gave you the good head. So, what we are saying is, a steward is one who manages another's property. Clearly, an owner is not a steward. He is the owner. The owner may not be the one in possession, and the one in possession may not be the owner. So I'm using now some legal terms. I've come with a friend of mine, and he's the one who drove the car. But it's my car. So he was in possession. If he decided to turn right, I couldn't stop him. Because he's the one in possession. But if you go to the logbook, the title document, the name is not his. It is my name. So as a steward, you can confuse what you possess and think you are the owner. Am I communicating? Because a steward is a person in possession, but he has no ownership. Am I communicating? So you need to understand that possession is not ownership. If you are renting somebody's house, you may not even tell him not to come in, as long as you pay rent. But he still has a title to the house. He is the owner, but you are in possession. So do not mistake being in possession for ownership. Because the moment you do, you end up in jail. Because you are going to misuse somebody's property and he'll take you to court and you'll be jailed. So as person in possession, you must always be careful how you manage for the owner. The steward, for sure, is in possession. The owner retains the ownership, even when you are in possession. Hope that comes out clear. So when you talk about stewardship, it's the very concept that we recognize we are in possession, but not in ownership. Unfortunately, even people who are in possession and not owners can pretend to own. Like the devil. He's a pretending owner. He pretends to own us, does he? He is only cheating himself that he is in ownership. He's only in possession. And even then, if you allow him. Are we together? Our owner is God. He created us. He saved us. We belong to him double. We belong to him because he created us. We belong to him because he saved us. He owns us double. The devil doesn't come into it. And I think that will be something very, very important to own. You know, so we are clear that stewardship means not ownership. And stewardship means you are conducting, supervising, or managing something for somebody else. You are also being careful and responsible as you manage this thing for the person who has entered. My best example, I normally think of a bank manager. A bank manager can sign $1 billion shillings check to a business and it will not bounce. Because if the bank has 100 billion and he's the CEO of the bank, he can sign it. But let me tell you, that same day he's signing 1 billion, the wife has told him, and remember, don't come home without bread. We have no bread. He checked in his pocket, he doesn't have enough money for bread. The money is the bank. He is in possession, but not in ownership. The one in ownership is the one in his pocket. Can you imagine, after signing all that, to appear with the wife? Where is the bread? I have no money. What do you mean, a bank manager? Now, the wife could easily make him start thinking that the money of the bank, he is the owner rather than possession. Bank managers are stewards of the shareholders' funds and the client's fund, because the money in the bank is not just for shareholders, it's also for those of us who bank there. Am I right? But they are under the Banking Act. They are controlled how they do it. They cannot use that money other than according to the law. So although you are a manager and you have you are in possession of billions, your salary may be only 200,000, and you have to budget it properly to take you to the end of the month. Your child is thrown out of school, and you are still dealing with the billions. And they only need 50,000 shillings, but you don't have it. Are you getting the picture? So it's very important to start understanding that all of us understand that if you're a steward, you must be very careful never to start imagining that you're in possession. Now, I want to very quickly then mention that there are many verses that refer to this possession and not ownership. Acts 4:32. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of his possessions was his own, but they shared everything they had. In other words, Ananias and Sapphira owned a plot of land. But because the church had decided, they have community. It was a community kind of life, where your property, my property is all put together to belong to the church. So although it is in my possession, it's not mine. But Ananias and Sapphira were a very united family. In fact, the best example of a good marriage. Can you imagine? That wife could not embarrass the husband. They were in total agreement, they lied to the Holy Spirit. So when the husband came, he was asked, is this all the money? You sold the land? Yes. Out he went, dead. You remember the story? The wife of God, Mrs., is this all? Oh yes, hallelujah, we are serving the Lord. Follow those steps. They were dead because they were united in pretending they owned something they only possessed. Because here, the church had decided that all of us own everything. But let's put it all together. It now belongs to the church. So they wanted to pretend to be in agreement, but they are living differently. That's why no other church has ever started that. It's not biblically correct. That's why the Bible, those of you doing hermeneutics know, the Bible interprets itself, isn't it? So although we read it here, we are not suggesting that you go and do it. That's communism, and it has failed throughout the world. Are we together? So it's important to understand what went wrong is that the Ananias and Sapphira were willing to hand over the ownership and only remain in possession. Then they started behaving like they own. So I don't know whether you seated here, there are things which you don't own, and yet you are behaving like you are actually in possession. And I think that's something you need to ask yourself. Because I pray you don't die like Ananias. But you see, it's the same God, isn't it? When you start pretending to own something you don't, there'll be a problem. But I really like 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. For who makes you different from anyone else? Whatever your name. The word of God is talking to you. Who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you not receive? Just tell me something you have that was not a given. What do you have you did not receive? And then he says, and if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not? This is a very critical verse in the subject of stewardship. That everything, not some, the Bible is saying everything you have is actually a gift. Let's start with your education. There is no way you will be in the university if you do not have a good IQ. Am I okay to assume that? That's a gift God has given you. That's how you're in the university. So when you start being proud, I'm an undergraduate. Okay, one day you'll be overgraduate. But for the time being, you are an undergraduate. And you are being proud about it. The word of God says, what makes you different from others? What do you have? IQ comes from God. It's a gift. And God will hold you accountable for how you have used your IQ. Some of you have an IQ where you are an A student without a minus. But because you are so lazy, you're a bad steward, you keep getting B+, and you are telling your parents, well, I got a B+. Even your parents clap for you. When in meaning how God is saying, you are not right. I gave you a B and A mind, but because you're not a good steward, you're not getting a B. And at the B level, you are having a C+. But the C+ was given a brain for C+. So God looks at C+ and says, well done, good and faithful servant. Looks at the B+ and says, useless. You are not using my gift properly. And that's why we go wrong. Because when you hear a guy had an A-, everybody congratulates him, isn't it? God in the middle will say, wait a minute, what is an A- doing with you? I gave you an A straight mind. And if you are honest, you agree you are lazy. You have gotten an A straight, but you are lazy. So God is congratulating the big guy, and he is telling you, you are lukewarm, I'll throw you out of my mouth. When you are a steward, it's very important to understand as a steward, number one, to understand is a gift. But as I'm speaking, I'm sure you are already finding it very difficult to accept that your IQ is a gift. But if you think you got it, what did you do to get an IQ that is high? All studies show you are born with it. Am I right? So it's not yours. Now, if you got it from God, you are not the owner. You are in possession, but you are not the owner. One day, the owner will ask you what you did with the IQ. Am I right? What will you say? So when you find students that are lazy and are not performing well, the lecturer may not do anything to you. But because they are not the owners of the IQ, God is the owner. and will hold you responsible for not doing your very best. The lecturer may not even bother. I agree. What about you? So when you understand that it came from God, you become careful how you use it. Because you know very well the owner could ask for it. But I did very well. No wonder I did. I passed. That's why I'm here. At my Form 4, I passed with the flying colors. But the truth is, it's God. Can you imagine the week of the exam if you had started diarrheaing? And so you start the exam, permission, you run to the toilet. After about 30 minutes, back out. Will you pass the exam? What made you not diarrhea during the exam? Am I communicating? You need to understand you only good grade because the Lord prevented you from diarrhea. Okay, whatever other problem. But diarrhea is a good example. Am I right? So you need to understand. But because you sometimes fail to see God's provisions, and that God is the one who has done it, you start becoming proud. So you look at others, I'm the cleverest. Cleverest by whose standard? You are operating with somebody else's IQ, owned by God. And I think that will be very, very important. So when you talk about stewardship, this is a key verse. Ask him, what do you have you are not given? That you actually got it for yourself. The other day I was speaking in medical school on the same topic. And medical school in Kenya, they are normally straight A's. Am I right? So he starts feeling, wow. And then I ask him, 3 things. Number 1, where do you get the IQ? Number 2, how come you are healthy enough during the exam? Number 3, how come the marked properly? All those are inputs to the result. Am I right? You start understanding. It's true I got a straight A. But if I'm to be honest, these are gifts from God. And so very, very important that we understand that. Let's look at 1 Peter 1:18-19. For you know that it was not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you are redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your forefathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. Here the key word is redeemed. In other words, you belong to the devil because of the fall of Adam. And the devil could have claimed you. But by Christ dying on the cross, he redeemed. What is to redeem? To redeem is to prepare for somebody so that they are released. For example, if you haven't paid your debts, there's something called civil jail. Civil jail, and a friend of mine actually went through it. You know what is civil jail? The people who have lent you money pay the government so that the government can lock you up at their cost. They are not after their money. They just want you to feel how bad they feel. It's called civil jail. Can you imagine if your friends come and pay the debt, since the debt was the one causing you to be there, so you'll be released, isn't it? That way you have been redeemed. And Christ has redeemed us. Because he has redeemed us, he owns us. As Christians, we need to understand there's nothing about us where we're in control. And that's something very important to understand. The moment you become a Christian, you allow God, or rather what you are saying, when you say, I am born again, you are saying, initially I was in control of my life. Now, I allow Christ to be in control of my life. That's why it's totally biblical to hear people, you see it on TV saying, order your morning, command your morning. Have you seen that? You don't command your morning. You are owned by God. He can do with your morning whatever he chooses. His own son said, this cup, not too good, but you own me. So not my will, but yours. Getting born again means surrendering the control of your life to be under the owner. You only do what the owner allows you to do. And even if you have certain desires and you give them in prayer, finally you say, not my will, but yours. And so many things that happen to us and we're not happy with them. Sometimes you get to where you feel, I want to abandon God. Why? When did he do? Now, surely, that you have forgotten who you are. Because if he owns you, he can do whatever he chooses. A lady that was called Mrs. Job told the husband, surely, we have lived in holiness. How can that God of yours do this? Job said, don't you understand? He can do with us whatever he chooses. You know the story of Job, isn't it? So you need to understand, are you having the Job mentality or the Mrs. Job mentality? The Mrs. Job mentality is we own our lives. We control it. And with God we are trading. Scratch my back, I scratch your back. If I'm holy, God must do what I tell him. Now you wonder who is God. Sometimes you should step your prayers and then play them back and start wondering who is asking the other. Sometimes we are talking to God as if we are the ones wise enough. I'm getting the point. To be a steward means you are allowed to ask for things. For example, you are running my farm and I'm keeping cows, but you have realized cows don't give as much money as pigs. You can't come one day and I find you have sold my cows and you are keeping pigs. You'll be fired. You can even be put to jail. If you think my cows are not making money, you have to come back to me and say, Bwana mkubwa, can you consider keeping pigs? And the same thing, your life. Your life belongs to God. So you can't start ordering God because he actually owns you. We were bought with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. So when you say I'm a steward, you mean you are born again. Or to put the other way around, you cannot be born again and not be a steward. The same word. Because born again means surrendering your life. When you surrender ownership of your life. So Christ starts owning you. Are we together? And he can do with you whatever he chooses. The good thing with God as our owner is that he has no needs of his own. Are you aware God has no needs? At all. Not even one. He has no needs. You know, sometimes we say we are serving the Lord to mean like there is a need we are meeting. There is no such a thing. God has no needs. So whenever we are serving the Lord, it's that we are serving God's people to the glory of God. Am I communicating? The needs are not with God. They are with God's people. So when you understand that, you like, remember I'm preaching, so I can say I'm serving God. Surely God doesn't need my sermon. It is you who needs it. Am I right? So serving God is actually serving man to the glory of God, or the instructions of God. And it's very important to understand. That's what you mean by being saved. You know, if you really understand you're a steward, number one, you have no right to question. Look at Romans 9:20. But who are you, O man, to talk to God, back to God? Shall what is formed say to him who formed it, why did you make me like this? The moment you understand what it means to be a steward, means you can pray to God, you can seek his mercy, but you can't command him around. You have no right to question. But let me repeat. The good thing with God is that there's nothing he will ever do with you about himself. Whenever he uses you, even in real trouble, it's finally for your good. Isn't that the message of Romans chapter 8, verse 28? Not some things, but all things work ultimately for the good of those who love the Lord. Are we together? The good thing is that the verse doesn't say all things work good. Just read it again. It doesn't say all things work good. It says all things work for good. Which means some things work bad, some things work very bad, but even the very bad is actually ultimately working for your good. Am I communicating? So you understand that even the very worst thing, you look back later and see even that was finally for my good. Maybe when you're very young, you may not have seen enough. I'm over 70, and I can tell you, I look at my life, and I got saved over 55 years ago, and I can tell you the various things I questioned God. Hey, God, how can you do this? I'm a child, I'm a boy serving you. How can you allow it? 70 years later, I look and I say, yeah. God, thank you for not allowing it. I now understand why you blocked, you did not answer it, you did not do you took me through it for my good. Am I communicating? You need to understand that although we are saying you have no right to question, the reason you have no right to question are three. Number one, because God is all-knowing. Number two, because God is all-loving. Number three, because you know you are not wise enough. So why would you question? You are questioning him without enough information. So when you become a steward, you come to where you pray to God, but always aware that you are limited with your information. Let me just change subject and talk about the benefits of accepting to be a steward. Or rather, accepting to be born again. Some people claim to be born again, but they are not stewards. That means they are not really born again. Because if you are born again, you cannot be born again and in control of your life. You know, when you control your life, you can say, God, I want to marry Atieno. I hope there is nobody called Atieno here. I want to marry Atieno. Then God sends you to Kakeke. Like, well, no, I don't want to marry. I'm marrying Atieno. Now, wait a minute. You need to understand that if you truly are a Christian, you surrender your life. And he says Atieno. And Atieno has rather long nose. And the ears are flappy like an elephant. You say, God, I don't know why you want me to marry such a woman, but because you know better than me, I'm going to marry Atieno. Am I communicating? Because deep down you know God means good. And that even these flappy ears are finally going to work for you. I can see you're laughing. But it's very important you understand stewardship. And you know, the first thing that happens if you live a life of stewardship, the first thing that happens when you live a life of stewardship is you live a life of peace. When you realize that even if you are very bad, you are in the hospital, you are in pain, then you sense, wait a minute, even this will work for my good. You will be crying in pain and smiling at the same time. Only a Christian can go through that. Where you sense that although these things are bad, if I'm steward, everything concerning me is taken care of by the owner. And so if he allows me to go through this, I know to work out for my good. So you remain at peace. That's one of the things that a non-Christian can understand. In fact, they think we are fools. When things are good, you have just failed the exam with glowing colors. Then you remember, even he is the one who created, is it called an Hilo? Those of you who run Hebrew, out of nothing. He created the world out of nothing. If he can create the world out of nothing, he can create a career out of a day. Am I communicating? Is that possible for God? Yeah. So you are disappointed. That's human. You are disappointed. But at the same time, you are suspicious. Even this E, I hope it's not an E. Even this E, God will work out something. Am I communicating? So it's important to understand that when you learn stewardship, it gives you a sense of freedom and peace. You know, the best example of a steward is a slave. Although we have no slaves these days as such. A slave is somebody whom you bought in a market, so he works for you with no salary. So he never asks for any salary. You own him. Now that's who you are. Paul keeps saying, I'm a slave of Jesus Christ. If you are born again, you totally belong to Jesus. Because you belong to Jesus, three things will follow. Number one, maybe negatively, there's no retirement. Because slaves don't retire. They just die and they are buried by the owner. Am I communicating? So if you are a slave of Jesus, there will be no retirement. There's another time I was preaching in Machakos and somebody introduced me and said, you know, our speaker today was speaking to us in the university when we were students. And now our children have finished university. What was he trying to imply? By now it should have stopped. Now, he is creating an impression of the Bible. If I'm a slave, 70 years, I don't retire. There's no retirement for Christ's slave. Am I communicating? You don't say, I've worked for so long, I've preached for so long, now I stop. Now, that's a way of saying, God, I want to go home. Now, if you don't want to die, continue serving the Lord. Because if you truly are his slave, his steward, it means he'll be with you and bury you. Am I communicating? Thirdly and importantly, if you truly are a steward or his slave, it means that your medical problems are his problems. Because you see, if a slave is sick, work will stop. Am I right? It will be the responsibility of the owner to rush the guy to hospital quickly so that he can come back to work. Am I communicating? See that if you are a slave of Jesus, isn't it interest to ensure you are in health? Because when you are not in health, you will not do his work. Am I communicating? Unless he thinks his work is all for you to do. So it's very important to understand that sense that my problems are God's problems. The slave will have a medical insurance, not paid by him, paid by the owner. Similarly, your medical issues are God's responsibility if he owns you. It's true you have no retirement age, but more importantly, your problems are God's problems. You can always tell him, I'm in this, but I know you're aware, and I'm waiting for you to sort it out, because he's going to sort. Can you see, I'm trying to still give you a backup to understand why a slave, a steward, lives in peace. You know, if you're a steward, a disease can come and kill all the cows of the owner. You'll be very disappointed. But what have you lost? Nothing. You have lost absolutely nothing. Although the owner will come and wonder, how will I pay back the loan? You say, I'm so sorry. I don't understand what this disease is. You are sorry. But you have lost actually nothing. Whereas steward, you lose absolutely nothing. When you truly, and it's very important to understand that. So when you, and that's why this concept is a very major concept, because if you truly understand it, your life remains in peace. Related with the same, when you understand you are a steward, it means that your duty is to do the very best in managing the item. The results belong to God. Am I communicating? That means, for example, and that's why all you need is to tell people about being stewards. The moment you're a steward of Christ for your studies, the lecturers don't even have to be involved. Because God sees you. You know, if it's your mother who is, you are studying for your mother, she is away somewhere. You can tell, I studied so hard and failed. But God was with you when you were sleeping. He knows the truth. Am I communicating? So, you need to understand, if you really are a steward, you cannot be a steward and lazy. Word steward and lazy don't go together. Not in the same sentence. But how can you be lazy when your supervisor in heaven is with you 24/7? Am I communicating? And that's why you need to understand. I wish the employers knew this. That if you employ a Christian, you don't even have to put in a supervisor. Colossians chapter 3 says, we are working for our master in heaven. Not for the other master. That is Colossians 3:23. So you need to understand that if you truly are a steward, everything you do your very best. Your best will not be as good as mine. That's irrelevant. God knows what your best is. And as long as you do your best, that's what matters. So whatever the results, once you do your best, it doesn't matter the results. You accept whatever God gives. After you have done your very best. Not best according to your mother, I repeat. Best according to heaven. So that's all you need. And by the way, sometimes you study very hard and get a grade, and your parents are almost throwing you out of home. Because they don't understand that you actually did your best. Do you know God cannot behave like that? Because he knows the truth. When you say you did your best, he knows you did your best. All others misunderstand. So you'll be able to sleep at night with your failure, as long as heaven is smiling about your hard work. So what matters is not the results. What matters is diligence. Again, you can go to the book of Matthew chapter 25, the story of the talents. One guy came with double. The other one came with nothing. Now, you know, one came, I think, with 10, the other one was only with 4. Now, it did not matter who came with what. All those who invested and were diligent were given the same reward. Well done, good and faithful servant. God does not reward volume. In other words, your output is not what you get a reward for. It's your diligence. Am I communicating? Well done, not for that you brought many talents, but you are good and faithful. And that's what really matters to you. Were you faithful? In whatever you do you do your very best? If you are faithful, the result doesn't matter. Because it was very unfair. Just you go and read the story again. Very unfair. The guy who brought more and the guy who brought less were given the same reward. Well done, good and faithful. Enter into your master's rest. And actually, if you look at verse 21 and verse 23, they are just a copy-paste. So you are surely God. Don't you see this guy got more? Because God is not looking at volume. He is looking at faithfulness. A steward is not measured by volume. He is measured by stewardship. Rather by his diligence. Did he do his best? And that's what matters. Unfortunately, other human beings don't measure exactly like that. Next, you therefore do not have any pride. You cannot be a steward and be proud. Do you remember the verse we read? What you have, you are not given. It's a gift, so you can't be proud. You know, sometimes you feel, wow, am I not rich? Until you remember, this car is from God. This true suit is from God. What am I being proud about unless I'm a fool? In Kikuyu we say, Mugade wene ne monogia giko. In other words, you're a fool if you start showing off somebody else's property. In the middle of the dance, they could just say, bring this jewelry. And that's when you are in the middle of the dance with your boyfriend. No, I need it now. No, well, later. No, it's mine. You can see how embarrassing it will be. So if you are wearing somebody else's jewelry, you don't become proud. Am I right? Similarly, when you're a Christian and you understand everything is owned by God, and I've already taken longer than I wanted, everything is a gift of God, you never are proud. A Christian has no problem with pride. It's not that he is not tempted to be proud, but every time he is tempted, he remembers, I'm a steward. Everything I have, I was actually given. And the same God who gave me could have chosen to give somebody else. So what am I being proud about? Number 2, everybody who is a steward never suffers from jealousy. What is jealousy? Feeling like you don't have as much as the other person, and they don't even deserve to be having what they have. It's not yours. Remember the guys, some who entered the garden early in the morning, others entered the final hour, they were given the same salary, and they started complaining. Do you know the parable? And they were asked, wait a minute, it's my money. I can do with it whatever I want. In other words, where is the jealousy coming in? To be sitting, and some people become so jealous, they can't sleep at night. Surely, how can that guy get an A and I got only a C+? He doesn't even look like he has a proper head. Exactly how did he get it? Now, you don't understand. It's God's choice. Am I right? And when you become jealous, you are criticizing God, not the person. God opted to give him. Am I right? Now, if God refuses to give the person, what are you being jealous about? So the people that understand stewardship don't suffer from it. Let me just take these 3 friends of mine and assume I have 1 million shillings, which I don't have. Assume I have 1 million shillings. And I'm going to share this money between you to return to me next Wednesday. You look like a business-minded person, so I'll give you half a million. Half a million, is that okay? Hey, that lady over there sounds she could follow you. So I'm giving her a whole 400,000, just a little less than you. You don't look like a business person. So I want to give you the remainder. Well, how much is remaining? He took half, took 400. How much is remaining of the 1 million? 100. He says, Steward, what's wrong with Mr. Nganga? How can he give me so little? Why give me a whole person, a whole 500 and the other 400? And he give me only 5? What's wrong with it? I'm going to even refuse it. You know, that's the story of the guy who got 1 talent. Yeah. It's because you don't understand stewardship. Why? If I meet you tomorrow, and this guy is being proud, walking proudly, I'm half millionaire. The whole group knows you are half millionaire. But they also know it's not yours. You are only holding it for me. Next Wednesday, you must return. So why would you be proud of my money? And you have to return it. So pride doesn't work. Am I communicating? Because you have to be a fool to be proud. When you know the owner could ask for it back. And my friend, you are feeling very jealous that others got more. You are suffering from inferiority complex. But just because you don't understand. The truth is, if you read the story in Matthew 25, the one is what I know you are capable of handling for now. Next time I can give you more, but for now you can only handle 100,000. So you don't feel intimidated. Christians don't feel intimidated because they know it's a stewardship issue. If he has given more and I'm given less, we are both equally poor. You know, all the three have nothing. Because all they have is mine. So they are equally rich and equally poor. So how can you start feeling intimidated, suffering from inferiority complex? About what? When you know this guy, next Wednesday you'll be equal. Now, it's very important to understand you don't suffer. So pride doesn't come in, but inferiority complex doesn't come in. That's why I'm invited to speak to people that are very rich. The other day, I was invited to speak at Windsor to a club of rich people. As we are seated with my wife at one of the tables, the ladies were talking to each other. And one asked, where did you go for summer shopping? And the one said, oh, this time Paris was the right one. Ah, no. The other one said, me, I went to New York. Now, how do you remember? After a few minutes, I'll be the one speaking. And I haven't even taken my to Mombasa. Now, you do understand. You start suffering from inferiority complex. How do you talk to such people? And they started talking about the buildings they own in Nairobi. Me, I thought they are government building. Now, that one. In fact, they were saying, by the way, we have put a penthouse at the top. So when you are shopping in Nairobi, you go up there. There will always be some drinks you can take as you rest before going home. Now, when we are in a club like that, you look at each other with my wife. But in a few minutes, I'll be talking. How can you talk to such people? And you see, the devil is about to give me a sermon until I remember, I'm a steward. What they have is not theirs. It belongs to our master. And the reason why they have called me is not to tell them how to be rich, is to have a spirit of contentment. And they don't know I'm the one who knows. So as I stand before them, my legs are not having fellowship because I'm clear their riches is irrelevant to me. Am I communicating? But when you suffer, when you don't understand stewardship, you can hardly deal with people. When there is a president, is a prime minister, is a what, you start having problems. Until you realize this guy is a prime minister because the Lord has given him that. He could give it tomorrow, but for now he's the one. It's not his. It belongs to God. Are you seeing the power of understanding this stewardship? So like I'm saying, it gives you the secret of contentment. And in the process, you have better relationship, whether single or married. Because you see, once you understand stewardship, and he has a lot of money and he's not giving you any, you are not bothered. Because you know very well, whatever he can give you is only what the Lord allows him to give. I got married in 1979, more than 44 years ago. And I still remember us debating with my girlfriend, my wife. Because I kept inviting people for the wedding. And I would tell them, by the way, our wedding is so far away. My wife comes from Mount Kenya, slopes of Mount Kenya, and I come from the slopes of the Aberdares. So we had to go through several districts between the wedding and the reception. So the cars needed to be very strong. So I said, don't worry, if your car can't make it, I understand. Why? God gave me a concept as a young man, that the people who will come to my wedding are the ones the Lord has released. So if you don't come, I have no quarrel with you. God did not release you. If I had a quarrel, I would have to have with God, isn't it? So people never came, and he had no problem with it. Our friendship continued. But some people came because of tourism. It's not that they care about me. They just wanted to see Mount Kenya and see there. And you can start, if you don't understand stewardship, you are likely to start hating your real friends to take these fake tourists. Am I communicating? But when you start understanding, a steward means you receive only what God has given. Then you can retain friendship with the people who are not very helpful. Because for you, you know when the Lord decides. And the same thing with you and your father. You pray, I need pocket money. If you give, God allow him to send me 5,000, 5K. Only for the guy to send you 500 shillings. You wonder, did he understand what I requested? And next time you feel like you're not going home. You have no interest in your father. Why? Because you are not a steward. You know very well, your father cannot give you what God does not allow. And sometimes he actually is unhappy with you. Then when he's just about to send 500, he has a zero. Around yesterday. Now, you are 5,000. But his intention was 500. When God wants you to get what you will get it appended. Because you belong to God. Am I communicating? When you are a steward, you understand your life is not under your control. It goes out. So you can never have a problem with your father, whether he gives you or doesn't give you, because you don't actually ask from God. You don't ask from your father. You ask from God. And your father is not the one giving you. But your father is only a vehicle for what God is giving. Just like you don't pay your water bills to the pipe. You know very well the pipe only delivers the water. Where does the water come from? County government. Am I right? So you pay your bills to the county government. Your father is only a pipe. So God is a real source. Am I communicating? So you can't have a problem. If you are married, the same thing with your husband. Just tell God, make him buy you a new dress. Then he doesn't buy. You have no quarrel with him. God did not allow it. Now, because if God really allows, that guy will be sleepless until he buys the dress. That's who God is. You are a steward. He owns you. So you need to understand, if you understand the subject of stewardship, you have no problem with anybody because you belong to God. And you know God can use anybody, anywhere, to meet your needs. But it's actually God who is meeting your needs. Sorry, I've taken longer than I would have wanted. But I would have wanted to talk about the duties of a steward. And to talk about the steward is a giver. And the importance of applying giving if you are a steward. Because if it's not your money, it's God's money, you'll find it easier to give. And you also know that if you're a steward, part of the money given to you is your own enjoyment. Now there are people who feel like it's wrong for a Christian to go for a holiday. In fact, you want to hide. No, part of the money God has given you is for your own use. Anyway, I've run out of time, but it's important to understand that. It says in Matthew 6:1, so do not worry, what shall we eat? For the pagans worry about these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Am I communicating? So God will provide. So if He gives you money enough to go for a holiday in New York, fly without any conscience having a problem because God has provided. Am I communicating? Part of the money is to give others and help others. Part of the money is for your own. Anyway, since you have agreed, you read the book from your library. I think that will be important. Let me finish with 1 Corinthians 3:13. Their work will be shown for what it is. That is also our work. Because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, And the fire will test the quality of each person's work. So I finish with this. If you truly are a steward, you know one day you'll have to give an answer to what you did. Are we together? If you're a father, your children are not yours. Although you keep saying they are yours. You are only in possession. They belong to God. And your child cannot complain. They don't even know what to complain about. But one day, every father will answer for how they treated their children. The children were allocated to you, at least for 20 years, to look after. What did you do with them? The same thing with a wife. A wife is a stewardship principle allocated to you until death do us part. The wife may be innocent, never complains, but one day every husband will answer what they did with their wives. Okay, I should also have said about women. Now, some women don't look after their husbands well. But the husband is willing to eat together every day. But there's no problem. After all, it also has beans, and therefore it has protein and starch. But one day, my sister, you have to answer why your husband ended up dying early. And you could have afforded to cook well. He will not ask you, but God will ask you questions. You are a steward. Are we together? There is a day of account. Your work will be tested. Let us pray.